What's up, everybody? This is KG. If you've ever had the curiosity or the thought of becoming a building inspector, or if you're curious to know about the profession of being a building inspector, then stick around and watch this video. This can surely be a stable and rewarding profession, and you can make a real impact on the society around you. And whether you live in Canada or USA, this video will be able to give you a good grounding and a good base of information to pursue a career path as a building inspector. I'm personally based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, so I will be able to give a little more in-depth information about that area, but you can also extrapolate some information from here and use it in the rest of North America as well. So typically most cities and jurisdictions have their own building departments, and they regulate safety of the building. So structural safety, fire safety, and health safety. Those are the main categories that are typically covered by building inspectors. And what we try to do is make sure the buildings are built as safely as possible for all of us to use. Now, the way building departments typically work is when you have a proposal, you hire an architect or an engineer or a combination to come in and apply for building permits to build maybe a house or a commercial building or an industrial building or a hospital or a school, etc., etc. And once the building permit does get issued, then the building inspector goes out at various stages, such as the foundations or during the structural framing or at various stages of construction to make sure that the building is being built according to the approved drawings and to the standards of the local building code. Now, inspectors may be specialized in certain parts of the building, so there may be certain people who are plumbing inspectors, there may be HVAC inspectors, there could be architectural inspectors who check the architectural features of the building, and so on and so forth. There's different sections and there's different levels of inspectors. So you could be a junior inspector, you could be a regular inspector, and you could potentially be a senior inspector. So there are different levels of inspectors and different types of inspectors. There may be inspectors who focus on residential construction. There may be inspectors that focus on commercial construction. So depending on the job description and the job titles, you will see different inspectors will be responsible for different areas of the construction. And depending where you live, they may have a different name, like a building official or a building inspector or a building specialist. Different types of terms and names may be used, but they're all basically building inspectors. So you may be wondering what type of education or background you might need to become a building inspector. And from what I have seen myself, people come from various backgrounds. I personally come from a background of architecture. I studied architecture in university, and that's my area of expertise. You may have also studied engineering, structural engineering, mechanical engineering, even civil engineering. People from those backgrounds can also become building inspectors. Also, people who are involved in overall construction, like construction management or site management or project management related to construction, those people may also be able to end up in a inspector role. And I've also seen people come over from the trades. So I've seen people who have been carpenters, who have been plumbers, and also people from the background of HVAC come into inspector roles, and they're usually very good at their role because they've actually physically done a lot of the work in the past, and then they can translate that into becoming an inspector and be very good and very handy on the job site. So as long as you're in the field of construction somehow, some way, you could eventually work your way into a role of becoming a building inspector. Now, in the province of Ontario, additionally to that type of a background, you do need to get building code qualifications. And what they call it here is BCIN, which is a building code identification number. And once you get that, you can take various exams in the building code, and those are administered by the provincial government. And as you take these exams, you get more and more qualified to inspect more and more building elements. So for example, we have house, we have small buildings, we have large buildings, we have complex buildings, we have plumbing, we have building services, which is like the ventilation and all that kind of stuff. Obviously building structural elements. So there are different exams that you have to get and get qualified in order to eventually become a full-fledged building inspector. Now, in order to study for these exams, you can go to the actual provincial site. and they are the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and you can look up the different ways to study and take those exams. They do have some night school and night classes for it. There's also a group called OBOA, which is the Ontario Building Officials Association. They also help you study for and give study booklets and help you prepare for the exam. So all those things you could look into to be able to bring yourself closer to becoming a full-fledged inspector. Now the good thing is, even if you're in the process and maybe have only taken one of the exams or a small portion of the exams, that will still help you to be able to land a role, because as long as you're working towards getting all those qualifications, typically you're good to be hired into one of the municipalities, and from there you can finish taking the rest of the exams and bring yourself up to full qualification. You'll still have an advantage over a lot of people who may apply for a building inspector position, because many people do not have any of the provincial exams when they first apply for the city jobs. And anyone who has some of those building code qualifications ahead of time, they're put into higher likelihood of getting hired for those types of positions. So definitely worth looking into. Now again, you can translate this over to other provinces or states in the United States. You can look into your specific place you live and see what type of qualifications they need for their particular building code. So you have your American building codes, you have your Canadian building codes. Each one has their own different rules, which are a little bit different, and their qualification processes are also a little bit different. So look up your specific location to see what qualifications you may need. So now I'm going to tell you how I personally became an inspector. I graduated from university with an architectural degree, but before I even worked for the municipality, I was working in the private sector, basically doing restaurant and retail design and construction. That was my area of expertise. And I did that for a number of years. And then eventually at some point I got a job with the city. And the first position I got in the city was called an application examiner. And those are the people who take in the applications when you're applying for a building permit. So say, for example, you were applying to build a house. You would have come to the front counter, and that's where I would have been to take in your application. And back when I started, it was still paper. So you would bring 2 sets of drawings, and I would take them in. I would take the payments, the application forms. And also, if you had inquiries, you would come into the front counter, ask the questions: how high can I build? What's my setbacks? How big of a house can I build? Etc., etc. Or any other kind of rules to do with construction. You may come into the counter and have general inquiries. I would be helping with that kind of stuff. And after that, I went into a position called a building code examiner. Now in the position of a building code examiner, once a permit has been applied for, I would be checking the actual drawings to see if they meet the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. So I would check for the fire safety and health safety regulations, the things that were in the code, and make sure that the applied drawings met those requirements and that information was actually there. And if not, then I would go back and forth with the designer until the drawings were up to par, and then after that I would pass it and release it for construction. So after doing that for a few years, I got curious about wanting to see how things actually play out in the field, and now I had an opportunity to apply for a building inspector role. Now I could have applied to be either a commercial inspector or a residential inspector. Those were the areas in my municipality that they give you the choice of going into. So if I had become a commercial one, I would have been checking condos, high-rise buildings, malls, industrial buildings, stuff like that. And on the residential side, you would do houses, you would do small buildings, you would do things like a strip plaza, you could do row townhomes, you could do stacked townhomes, maybe a little standalone convenience store, things like that. So those were the kinds of things that you could do as a residential. So I went into the residential inspector side because I wanted to see that area of work, and I was interested in wood frame construction, which is housing is normally wood frame construction. And when I was on the private side, I had been doing commercial work, which is like more masonry and steel frame construction. So I kind of wanted to get a feel for wood frame construction because I had never actually dealt with it in my career up to that point. So that's what I became, and that's what I currently do as an inspector. I'm a residential and small buildings type inspector, and I do enjoy the job. It's pretty good. I get to take care of a certain area, make sure everything in that area is being built properly. I also got to investigate for illegal construction. Sometimes there's complaints of people building without a permit, and if I catch illegal construction, I got to issue orders and make them come in and get the permit to legalize what they're doing or remove the illegal work. I also have to investigate things like fires or vehicle impact damage. Sometimes if a car has crashed into a building, something like that. Emergency situations, things of that nature do come up occasionally. So I may have to go investigate an unsafe building or something that may be ready to collapse for some reason, maybe is due to negligence or lack of maintenance or things of that nature. And I do occasionally have to go to court in case people don't comply with something or they're trying to drag something on for too long without compliance. Then sometimes I do have to end up in court to give my evidence and hopefully get them to comply with whatever needs to be complied with. So the next thing you might be thinking about is how much can a building inspector make? So I can speak for the province of Ontario. Over here, most likely at a starting place, you'll probably be making about 70 grand a year, $70,000 a year, up to about $110,000 a year on the higher end, maybe up to $120,000 a year if you become like a senior inspector. So a senior inspector might be bringing in 120, give or take. Somewhere in the middle would be a regular inspector, maybe 80 to 110 would be a regular inspector, and maybe a junior inspector position would be closer to like $70,000. So that would be the range that you're looking at in this province. It could vary. If you're in a smaller town, it might be a little bit lower, but if you're in a bigger city or a bigger place, that is most likely the range you're going to fall in with the job today. And the year I'm filming this video is 2025. So I would say that is like a mid-range decent salary for this type of a position. So after listening to what I've just mentioned, you got to really think, is this for you? This job definitely requires quite a bit of technical skill. You have to know the building codes. Most likely you would be better off if you do have experience working on job sites and are familiar with construction and different construction methods and the rules and regulations. The other thing you want to think about is how you are with people, because this job is daily face-to-face interactions. You got to meet people on site, and you've got to check the work. You got to see if things are going right or wrong. You got to be able to communicate quite well, give clear direction. Does an inspection pass? Does an inspection fail? What needs to be done to correct it? It's got to be clear. You got to be able to make those kind of calls. And that leads me to say even further, you have to also be able to make decisions. You got to be a decision maker. If you're a flip-floppy kind of person and you don't feel comfortable making calls, this is definitely not the job for you. You have to be comfortable making decisions and making calls. Now, sometimes you can always consult with your higher ups if you're not sure about something, and when you're newer at the job, of course, it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out what the right calls are to make. But at a certain point, you want to become independent and be confident in making your decisions and making the correct calls for the job. So if you're into problem solving and helping buildings get built correctly and safely, then this is definitely a job you want to look into, and it is definitely satisfying and fulfilling. One other thing I really like about the job is that you get to see various amounts of construction. Usually if you're working for one company, you may know how they do their particular work or their particular type of construction, but in this job I get to see everybody's work. So I can see the best construction to mid-level construction to the worst construction. I know what's supposed to happen when I'm there because I get to see everybody's work. And it's also a great way to get to know everybody in the industry. You know all the different builders, all the different people doing construction, and it's a great way to network with a lot of people, get to know a lot of different people. You can pick the brains of different experienced people and figure out what's the best way to construct. I always like to pick the best things from different job sites, and then I teach it to other people on other job sites who may not be as experienced or they're inexperienced, and help them improve their ability to build and construct. So if this type of a lifestyle intrigues you, you may be a great fit for the role of a building inspector. So if you are interested in becoming a building inspector, definitely look up your own jurisdiction and look up the authorities in your jurisdiction. A lot of times they have a lot of free information and free resources to help guide you towards becoming an inspector wherever you live. And you can get a lot of great information on their websites. So hopefully you found this video informative. If you do have any questions, please leave them below for me in the comments section. If there's anything you think I missed or you want me to elaborate a little bit further, if you leave those questions for me, I will definitely answer you back and give you the best of my knowledge for those questions. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so. And remember to hit the bell button so you're notified each and every time I post a new video. And remember to share this video with all of your friends. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.